Okay, so we're going to get started. If you are here today, you're pretty lucky because the material in this I've used to get tens of thousands of people jobs throughout the past several decades. This is a webinar based article that was one of the first articles that I actually ever wrote for attorneys. It was the only article there was about interviewing in law firms for a long period of time. We were the first company ever to put articles up about it because people wanted to keep the information secret, if you can believe it. And I want to make it as relevant as possible. A lot of people go into interviews and don't do well. And some people go into interviews of jobs that they want to get and they don't get the jobs and often don't know what's going on when they don't get positions. Different points in time, you can get different receptions from different firms and different markets. The idea is you want to do as well as you can when you go into interviews. A lot of what you do when you go into interviews is based on your preparation. Preparing, that means that you need to learn everything you possibly can about the place you're interviewing with. It means you need to learn about the attorneys you're interviewing with. You need to learn what they spend their time doing. And you need to learn about the firm and the types of cases it handles or the types of transactions it handles. You need to learn the types of clients it represents. You need to read and study information very closely. And now you are studying this information from the standpoint of being a supporter of the firm and not going in and finding fault with them. So you may not like the salaries. You may not like their clients. You may not like the types of people they represent. You may not like those things, but that's not really your job to judge them. Your job when you prepare is no differently than if you were preparing to meet a client. You have to go in and understand the client. I've hired lots of very good attorneys to work for our company representing us or to represent me before. I've hired all sorts of different companies in the past, and the best ones are always prepared. They walk in and they know everything they possibly can about you, and they're able to quickly take your side and understand where you're coming from. And the people that aren't prepared are just not good. You know they're not good. Preparing is not necessarily knowing what the salary is. That's just what's in it for you. Preparing is knowing what the firm wants, knowing the kind of people they want, knowing the type of matters they represent, understanding their business as much as you can, and being prepared to ask questions. It's reading news articles about them. Anything you can find out to prepare and about the people and the culture and so forth is going to help you. Now, preparing doesn't mean that you heard someone that worked 3,000 hours there, or you heard someone that sued the firm because of who knows why. That's not preparing. Every organization goes through ups and downs. Almost every law firm gets sued for malpractice, for making mistakes. Everybody out there has negatives, and your job is not to find all the negatives of the firm and reach judgments about them before you go in there. Your job is to really find the positives about them. Preparing is finding out what you like about them. Once you get an interview, your job is to get a job. You can talk to people and come up with conclusions about the firm later, and it very well may not. That's fine. I've seen so many people pass up incredible opportunities with firms that would have just been the best fit possible for them. And their career just doesn't work out because they prepare in a way that they're looking for negative information. Just because a firm doesn't pay a lot of money doesn't make any sense. It's not always the best way to judge the firm because your ability to stay there in the long term and all sorts of other factors that can matter. So a lot of people are really not prepared when they interview. And because they're not prepared, they don't do well. Your preparation is you're finding reasons to like the firm and to like the job and to like the opportunity to get enthusiastic about it. You're not finding reasons to not like the firm. If you do that, people are going to see it on your face. It's going to come across and they're going to pick it up instantly. If you have a negative outlook towards the firm, just a few slip remarks that you make will give yourself away very quickly. And people are very smart. My dad was in the CIA. He was talking to his boss and he was saying negative things about the person. And the guy interrupted and said, "Don't think it or you'll show it." And that's true. And I thought about that instance because if you think something negative about someone, it's going to come across in your body language. It's going to come across in your enthusiasm. Preparing is not to find negative information and things you don't like, to psych yourself up. And that's what preparation is. Now, preparation is also going to be about how you answer the questions I'm going to go through. So one of the questions you're always going to get, and you may not get it from every firm, but everyone gets this question a lot in their career: why you decided to interview for the position. There's lots of ways to say that. I was interviewing a woman once to be not too long ago to work in our company. I said, "Why did you decide to interview here? And she said, oh, because I did a search on Google and you came up first when I searched for legal recruiter or something, which I thought was insane. But people will literally give reasons like that. They may say, oh, a recruiter contacted me about it, or I saw you had an opening. To give a meaningful answer to a position like this, or a question like this, you have to really understand why the firm is attractive. And that means when you're preparing, you have to see how you would fit in, how you think it would be a good opportunity for you. And I need to be really clear with everyone that's watching this today, because it's a very important point. When I go through and I've looked at the placements that I make and made throughout my career, I look at them and there's a story which for the majority of it, I would say more than 75%, and maybe even more than that, are people that are moving up, meaning the reasons for going to the next firm or the next employer are they're improving themselves in some place. So they may be moving from a major firm to a smaller firm, but they're moving to a smaller firm because they really want to do trials in their practice area. Smaller firms really good at this practice area and trials. They may move into a larger firm because they want to work on more sophisticated matters. They may be moving to a market because they want to settle down in a firm that's in their hometown and develop networks. But there's always something very positive about the reason they're moving. People do not want to hire people that are negative or have negative reasons. So when people ask you why you want to move, you have to really state why the firm you're moving to is a move up and why it's an improvement in your existing situation. And you need to convince the person you're talking to, everyone. And if you do that, then they're going to like you. So if a firm is coming out with a new practice area, they have a litigation firm going into corporate work, and you want to, and they're interviewing corporate associates to work with a new corporate partner. You talk about how it's a great ground floor opportunity. If they're a firm that's moving into a huge firm with a huge corporate practice and you're a firm with a smaller practice, you talk about how you want to work at a bigger firm. You have to have all sorts of reasons that articulate what makes that firm better. And every firm that you look at, I don't care what it is. If it's a one-person office, it could be, I want more independence. If it's a 1,000-person office, I want to work with more attorneys and get exposed to more things. If it's a general practice firm and you're working in a specific practice, then you say, because I want to work in general practice and I don't want to do. Every firm has something that you can articulate that makes it good. A lot of times, the best way of doing that is to talk to people inside the firm and come up with reasons that make the firm special and unique. And this is very basic. What makes it special? What makes it a good place to work? Not just why you want to work at that law firm because they're good in corporate or they're good in litigation. You want to work there because you've had a long-standing interest in this type of work. You love that this person's there. Whatever the reasons are, you have to be able to articulate specific reasons about why you like that employer. Because if you don't, someone else will. When I interview people, it's often insane. People come in and they're like, why do you want to work here? Well, I want more freedom. What do you mean you want more freedom? What does that mean? And they'll say, I don't want to have to do this or this. And those are not good reasons. Your reasons have to relate to something substantive, meaning they have to relate to something that makes the firm unique, that makes the people there unique, that makes the culture unique, that couldn't apply to any firm. It actually applies to them. And often you're going to learn that when you talk to people that are there. It's also about reading reviews and other things, but looking for the positives. When a firm's asking you why you're interviewing, they want you to say nice things about them. And they want you to frame your reasons for wanting to interview them as a way that you're trying to improve, meaning you're trying to get better. And the firm represents some sort of improvement in your career. And that's very attractive to them. And then the law firm's also looking to see what you say of your reasons for potentially moving. So if your reasons for moving are, I'm not getting any work, people there aren't nice. If you're not getting enough work, that means probably that you're not doing good work and people aren't giving you work. If you see the people that aren't nice, it means you're not getting along with the people there. So you have to be very clear about ways that look positive as opposed to negative. No one wants to hear negative things. You want people to leave and feel upbeat and good about themselves after talking to you. Talking about wanting increased responsibility is a good thing. Talking to if the firm is growing, saying you want to be part of a growing firm where things are exciting. They have to be believable reasons. And they're only going to be believable if you spend the time preparing. And by preparing, that means asking questions and reading about the firm, talking to people if you can, and all that sort of thing. And the other thing I would think about too, and this is very important, is when you go into any interview, that your mindset needs to be trying to pretend like you're a lawyer, which you are, and a client is interviewing you, because you're going to be a representative of that firm. Law firms ask you what you know about them. And you need to be very well versed in the firm when you go in and really able to talk, and you can suddenly give them a bunch of information. They're going to be very impressed. Well prepared answers just really show that you're good at what you do. A law firm loves a candidate that says, I have 3 offers. Let me think about this. If you get offers, you're a much more valuable candidate than if you're waiting. Once you get an offer, you go into your interviews with a sense of confidence and you just do better. One of the things that I like to ask is what's happened to the people that have worked there in the past? Are they doing well? And what's going on with them? What did the firm teach them? And how was their career after that? Or what happens to people in similar situations to you? So getting that kind of information can be very positive, and it can show you what's going to happen to you probably as well. So don't go into an interview and not be ready to get the job. Another thing is you need to know your strength. Knowing your strengths are important. One of the things that I notice is most by the way you talk and by the way you deliver information and by your level of confidence and so forth, most firms already have a good idea of what your strengths are. You can certainly talk about that in your resumes or your transaction sheets and things. And you should be prepared to talk about your strengths and think positively about yourself. But one thing about strengths, I think, is a lot of times people will go into interviews and they'll say, I got this award, I did this, I was the best at this, and so forth. And a lot of times that's not always the most attractive type of thing. People like people that are very excited about work and their achievements and things, but at the same time, you're often going to do much better if you go in and you don't feel like you need to brag. Typically, that works a lot better, but understanding that you have value to offer and being self-confident is important. You go into a screening interview and there's 2 different ways that happens. In most cases, people will get another interview more than 50%. It's probably even higher than that. And the idea of a screening interview is the law firm is really just making sure that you're worth investing a full day or a half day of their time. And a screening interview is really just a quick meet and greet to see how you're going to do. They'll typically just ask a few questions about your work and responsibilities and try to get an understanding of how you're likely to fit in, and then maybe even get a sense of how you appear in terms of your psychological makeup, if you appear steady enough and that sort of thing. They're weeding people out that may have a sense of entitlement. So if you start asking about salary or vacation and benefits and things, if you can work remotely or if you come in a couple days a week, they'll probably don't like that. Eye contact and things. But your job, if you're a junior associate, for example, is just to leave the impression that you're hardworking, enthusiastic. They're not going to want to go into a lot of detail with you at that point, but just connecting with people and making a positive impression is really the biggest thing. It's just showing you have confidence. And just for the most part, it's about being yourself. It's much harder to get a callback as a senior associate than a junior associate. Firms will spend a lot of time deciding whether or not to even bring in a senior associate, because senior associates typically have higher billing rates. They're closer to making partner. They can upset the upper mobility of the balance kind of firms. Senior associates are expected to really understand what they're doing, have good questions, be able to connect with the interviewer and so forth at this point in your career. Yeah, so move on from there. And the cultural issues. It's interesting with partners. Typically, a lot of partners will actually control the interview more so than the other way around. Most partners will go into interviews, and especially ones with business, and really control things. The firm obviously is going to be taking a lot of their business, relying on the revenue that they bring in. So, of course, the partners are often in control when they're interviewing, but the law firm at the same time will have issues with their culture, how they feel that the person will get along and so forth. And it's much different than when you're interviewing, when you're an associate or a junior or senior associate interviewing as a partner. You have to be able to talk about things related to your business or your potential to bring in business, matters you can handle. A lot of people will go into interviews and they just won't be enthusiastic. Enthusiasm means you really have to want the job. You have to be able to pump yourself up, and you have to be able to be enthusiastic about the work and show that you like it. Clients want people that are enthusiastic. Everybody wants to deal with people that are enthusiastic. And a lot of times people will act enthusiastic even if they're not. I remember a long time ago, I was buying a building for a company, and I called up a bunch of different people to help me with the mortgage. And one person I spoke to said, "Oh, tell me all about it. And that sounds amazing. What else? And this and this and this and this and this." And thinking about it and in the background, like asking me what it looked like, what I was going to do with it, how many office offices it had, like what was the neighborhood like, all these questions. This is just someone giving a mortgage. Now, I'm sure that person could not have cared less, but they did all this and it made me like them because I was like this building I was buying and they liked it and it made me think. So I hired that person to do the mortgage. Well, it's the same thing with law firms. Law firms will hire people that ask a bunch of questions and get very enthusiastic. People hire people that are enthusiastic. All right. So the next thing is selling yourself. This is another form of enthusiasm. You need to be able to sell. So selling is extremely important in every profession. You have to get comfortable with selling. Being uncomfortable with selling is dumb. You can become president of the country if you're a good salesperson. You can do anything. The most successful people in the world are good at selling things. You have to sell. When you make a friend, you sell when you try to get into a school. You sell when you meet a mate. You sell. Everything's about selling. When you go to court, if you're a litigator, you're selling. If you are trying to get the good side of a transaction, you're selling. If you're filing a patent with a patent office, you're selling. You have to sell. And getting a job and being an attorney is all about selling. And you should become a student of sales, meaning everybody in the legal profession should read about sales and understand it. It's just about framing things in a positive way. And it's making sure that you're providing the right information and learning, doing things in a way that's helping you. Make sure you're selling yourself. And selling is about presentation. It's about being prepared. It's about having objections prepared to things. And it's really more of a frame of mind than anything, but it's very important. You should also look your best. I don't know why, but a lot of times people go into interviews and they will dress down, they'll dress casually. You should look your best. And the reason is because you're there to impress people and show that you take interviewing with them seriously. I used to work in a firm. It was the first firm in the country that didn't have a dress code. So anybody could wear whatever they wanted. They could wear shorts and t-shirts, but people that showed up to interviews at that firm that weren't wearing suits never got jobs or weren't dressed up because it was disrespectful. So even the attorneys in the firm that would wear shorts to work would always put on a suit to go visit their clients. And so they all kept suits in their office. You want to look good when you go into interviews. You need to think in terms of what would you want to see from your client. I had one guy once that was first in his class in a major law school, and he grew his hair down to his buttocks for some reason. I don't know why he did it. It doesn't matter to me, and no one would hire him despite what a great attorney he was, and which is a shame. And he was coming from a big firm. I think he got hired at a very big, very respected firm in Silicon Valley that was from New York, but no one else, when he needed a new job, would hire him. They just were very uncomfortable. And so you have to look your best. I'm not saying it doesn't work, but I'm saying you have to be very careful about looking your best. Little things like you want to be conservative with your colors and you don't want to wear a lot of perfume or makeup. I tell this story. I don't like telling it, but I'm going to tell it because I do think it's helpful. There are different associate cultures. So some associate cultures can be very nerdy. Others can be very collegiate, almost like a sorority or fraternity, or others can be very ethnic, or they can be all over the map. So whatever the culture of the associates is, you need to figure out and come across as someone that fits in there. You need to get a sense of the type of people that are there. And once you have a sense of the type of people, then you can conduct yourself in interviews and try to get along with them. The final one is listen. Listening is more important than talking in interviews. The second someone meets you or sees you, or they take a look at your resume for 10 seconds, they're reaching all sorts of conclusions. Many times the best way to get people to like you is to just listen and let them talk and let themselves feel like a big deal. People love talking about themselves. The more they talk about themselves and their accomplishments and they're able to talk, the better they feel. Allowing people to feel good about themselves is important. Really, as tempting as it is, because you have worked very hard to get an interview wherever you're going, as tempting as it is to talk about yourself, an interview typically will have gone much better. And this is just if you're able to listen and ask good questions and get people to talk. Getting people to talk will be very, very helpful. One of the things I've noticed a lot when many times the smarter people that I hired that had gone to like Harvard and the best law schools and stuff would always ask a ton of questions. Like they would come in and they would interview and they would ask a ton of questions. They would ask a ton of questions and they would just listen. They would always be listening. And I think that there's really something to that. A lot of times the smartest people will be the most interested in learning from other people. Because they're interested in learning, they become much more effective in everything they do. So I think it's very helpful to be a good listener, to ask questions, and to really be active. So that's the presentation. I think this is a really important topic, and that's some of the most helpful information that people have about interviews. I certainly appreciate everyone being here. Thank you.